Hello, my name is Hakon, and welcome back to my channel where today I'm going to do something that I have done before. I do feel that sometimes I introduce a video and I say, today I'm going to do something I haven't done before, but today it's something I have done before, but I've only done it once and it's something I wanted to do more of. So if you've been a subscriber for that long, which most of you wouldn't have, if you cast your memories back to the end of February 2020, which seems like a really long time ago now, for lots of reasons. It's a long time for my channel, which of course now has a lot more videos and a lot more views, a lot more followers, subscribers, what have you. But also it's a long time in the world as well. It feels like a really long time since February 2020. It was, yeah, different times, you might say. I will not dwell on that. I'm going to go back to even more different times because today, again, just like at the end of February 2020, I will be talking about vintage computer magazines from the 80s. Yes, I'm going to go back another 40 years almost. So in my previous episode of doing a computer magazine, I went through Your Computing, I believe it was, from March 1982. And this is before I had a computer in my life and before I knew much about computing. And so a lot of the things in it were new to me. So I'm going to try to do this in a slightly chronological order now. So today, I have another magazine that I bought on eBay around the same time as Your Computing. It may even have been in the same bundle, actually. And that is Computing Today from October 1982. I don't know much about this magazine. I haven't read it yet, so this is going to be my first impressions video. Now, one thing I find really interesting about these vintage computer magazines, and I'm sure you do too, is that at this time, so much was happening in the market. It was really, really dynamic. It hadn't sort of polarized into a low number of key players like Commodore and Spectrum and those ones, and IBM, etc. There were a lot more different computers trying to sort of get a share of the market. There were lots of competing standards, different storage formats, different, all kinds of things. It was truly a jungle out there, and I find that quite fascinating looking at the adverts of the early days of computing, of home microcomputing, to see what kind of things were moving around in the market, and also what kind of things that are pointed out as the selling points of these computers as well, besides price, obviously, because price was a very major thing. Now, 1982, of course, famously is the year that the Commodore 64 was released, and we know that that revolutionized the home computing market. That is to say, it was officially released in 1982. I have heard a story that apparently there was an unofficial release, and it was possible to actually get one in Japan, maybe in November the year before, but I don't know. I just thought I heard something about that one day. Never mind. That's not important right now. What is important is that this is a British computer magazine, and also, of course, things were different in Britain and the rest of Europe and in America. There were very different markets as well. So what happened in Britain at the time is going to be a bit different from what I'm used to as well from Norway, where I was in those days. So let's have a little look at Computing Today from October 1982. It cost a princely sum of 75p actually when it was new, which was quite a bit of money in 1982, isn't it? I think so. Anyway, let's get started. Yeah, boom. Okay, here we are on my desk. I've got my computing magazine here, and I will try to keep this in focus because it is very important. Is of course there's writing on the pages. I do want you to be able to read it, so I will try to check and double check my focus regularly and make sure that it is on. Spot. Okay, so here we are. Let's start with the cover, shall we? So we got computing today. I'll just move it to the middle here. Financial planning for all DIY spreadsheet program. I'm not sure what system that would be for. Win a spectrum system. Sounds exciting. Speed up your programming. System simulation on a micro. I'm not sure what kind of system they are simulating. It'll be interesting to see. Sharp practice. User report on the MZ80A. Right, and interesting, of course, the cover here, because you have a really sort of ledgers here with accounts from something that looks like it might be from the 19th century, and of course together with this has a mini calc, so it's a spreadsheet, and yeah. So in the early days of computing, of course, one of the big selling points of having a home computer were all the useful things that you could do. Most platforms, including the Commodore 64, which of course famously is it was used a lot most for gaming. They were trying to market it as something for the whole family. So you could have your household budgets, keep your accounts, your spending accounts, things like that, databases for different things, whether it's a collection or something else, etc. And they always start trying to make everyone interested. And for the kids, of course, it was programming, it was games. So a lot of these things were sort of trying to gear it towards the whole family. And of course, a lot of offices also needed budget computers. They couldn't afford your expensive ones necessarily. And of course, a lot of Commodore 64s also found their way into businesses as well. Although Commodore, of course, famously, they one of the reasons they went down was failed attempts to get a bigger share of the business market, or at least it seems that is one of the reasons they didn't make it. So let's start with the first page here. BBC, of course, we didn't have so much of the Acorns computers in Norway, so I don't know so much about those. I have seen documentaries and heard stories. Of course, it's quite a fascinating story how the Acorn became the BBC computer as well. Quite a fascinating one. There's a really good documentary there with Martin Freeman and what's his name? The guy who presents Pointless as in the competition to become the BBC computer. Right, alien destroyers. Yeah, you do want to destroy aliens. A lot of early computer games are involved with destroying aliens. Very important skill for kids to learn at an early age in case aliens invade. Right, volume 4, number 8. So it has been going for a few years, Computing Today. So it's one of the early computer magazines. I see they have a call out for articles, so you can send your articles for consideration. I see they're starting with consumer news, business news. Of course, they're trying to, just like the computers of the day, we're trying to cater for different markets. So the magazines, we're trying to be catch-alls as well. This one is quite fun. I've seen this advert before, and I think in the other magazine I did the last time. When you have 637 prospects to remember, you need our electronic card indexing and retrieval system. Of course, this is referencing the fact that Henry VIII may have had 6 wives, it says here, but few are aware of his 637 girlfriends. Yes, it is hard to keep track of that many. I mean, how many of you have 637 friends on Facebook and actually know all of them? Actually, by the fact that you have them on Facebook, you are also indexing them and actually keeping track of what they are, of who they are and what they do. So yeah, Cardbox, so that is a database, obviously. Let's see, CPM, Osborne, etc. Yep, good. 100 free programs with every purchase of an Atari 400 or 800. Of course, the Ataris, they were on the way out really by this time, and selling relatively cheaply, it looks like. I So the 800, I don't think they, if I remember correctly, I don't think there were any successors, true successors to these. I think these were sort of the end of the line. Now, Atari, of course, they started from the early sort of pre-home microcomputer era a few years before. Things were moving so fast. And basically, it was the TV games, as we call them in Norway. So you connect your thing to the TV and you have games on cartridges, and that's all the system does. Atari was one of the first ones to have the affordable home systems for gaming on your TV. And of course, that means they have lots of games, have lots of original games, and also there were third-party games were allowed to be made for the Ataris as well. Games like, for instance, one of my favorites, Hero, Helicopter Emergency Rescue Operations, was an Atari third-party game. Right, what else have we got? Of course, computers that didn't really make it so much. We got the Sharp. Of course, Sharp these days may actually be one of the biggest players in cash registers of the old kind. Of course, now they're more and more computerized, but the old style all-in-one cash register, if you get one in a shop today, it is most likely going to be a Sharp. At least that's my impression, anyway. Gemini Galaxy is a very nice name for a computer. CP/M, of course, for serious use, and this was one of the really early standards. Of course, CP/M made such a big difference because once you have a standard and you have a computer that can use it, you are making it so much easier for someone to actually develop programs for your computer. If you have a unique system, the thing is, because of the cost of developing software, it already needs to have an established market. So that's part of the initial investment of launching a new computer to market, is to make sure you have developers on board, and you may even have had to pay people up front to make sure there is a comprehensive suite of programs already available to a new platform. But for CP/M, even though not all CP/M compatibles were compatible with everything CP/M, it was a standard, and you had lots of systems that had that worked with the CP/M standard, including the first computer I had at home, or we had at home, our family had at home, which was a Norwegian-made Tiki 100, and that was CP/M compatible. Right, so what else we got? Phoenix monitor, daisy wheels, let's see, cheaper than a dot matrix printer. Yeah, daisy wheel printers, dot matrix printers, daisy wheel printers. I could imagine that is something that people might find very interesting as a sort of a vintage collector's item these days, for its look. What do we get here? RAM cards for the Gemini, 225 plus VAT for a 64K expansion RAM card. These were indeed different times. NASCOM 3, don't know that one. It's a lot of Gemini, NASCOM, Sharp here. What else? We got consumer news. So, and of course, there's still a lot of talk about how the government is spending money trying to get computers into schools. Very important, of course, at the time. Computing was the future. And this is quite early on as well. We did not have computers in our school in 82 that I knew of, anyway. I know we had computers in secondary school, and that was several years later. So I'm not going to read all of this. I'm just going to move on, I think. ZX keyboards, that was also something I saw a lot of in the previous magazine I looked at, and that is because famously, of course, the ZX had its membrane keyboard, which is absolutely horrible for typing. So there was a big market for third-party ZX keyboards. Let's see, Sharp, Commodore, Texas. Atari, Dragon, Epson equipment. So I think in Norway, in these early days, computers that I knew were around, that I noticed Dragon was around because they had a little display in our local shopping center. There was a Dragon there. I know Texas Instruments were around. Atari, I'm sure I've seen some of those too. So I think these are a lot of the ones that were available. Of course, Spectrum, definitely. I do not remember seeing any BBC Acorns in Norway, but they may have been around just a little bit more on the QT. I think they definitely were bigger in the British market. Business news, CPM add-on, computer network. Ooh, fancy. 1982, yes, why not? Mimi Micro. And of course, a lot of the evolution of computers was driven by business needs at this time. For instance, if you are an accounting company, you are going to be part of what drives the evolution of computing in these days, because you're such a big part of the potential market for anything that will improve the speed at which you can do your work, and also so very important. So science and business, of course, also things like trade, stocks, very early as well. I think stock trading is also one of those things that were quite instrumental in driving the need for something like the internet to become as solid as it was. So what do we have here? Probably the fastest microcomputer in the universe. That is quite a claim, but of course it says probably, so we know that's not the case. It certainly is micro. Jupiter Ace. That does sound like the name of some kind of pulp fiction, science pulp fiction hero. Jupiter Ace, to the rescue. Yes. Only $89.95, all inclusive. What do we got? A Z80A, so it's like a same processor as the Spectrum, running at 3.25 megahertz, which is not bad, actually. That is actually quite fast for a microcomputer. Softwares. Let's see. Assembly language. Do you Lisp? Now, this is one thing that when I was young and I was reading British computer magazines, one thing that I didn't really pick up on so much was the wordplay. It is a tradition in the British press that you use wordplay and punning headlines whenever possible. So softwares, do you Lisp, of course. So all this sort of play on words is everywhere, and I didn't pick up on it so much when I was that age. I'm only speaking a little bit of English at the time, but this was 82. This was before I knew any English, but of course, a few years later, in 1984, I would have started learning it in school, and a few years after that, I would be reading computer magazines and picking up most of the salient points rather well, but I would not pick up on the wordplay quite yet. I've got a little bit better at that as the years went by. Indeed, I'm quite good at making wordplay myself in English. So, right. What have I got? TRS 80 Genie software. Yeah. And it looks quite a serious one, so I'm not sure if this is some kind of, let's see, assembly converter, enhanced basic. Yeah, okay, so it's a little bit of sort of utility software there. What do we got here? Excel 4. Not Excel, but Accel as an accelerate. So obviously something that speeds things up. And let's see, it is impossible to give performance figures for a compiler in respect to speed of execution. This would vary with some programs to a quite startling factor of maybe, there's a bit of spelling mistake there, of maybe 20 or 30 times faster than the original, and at the other end of the spectrum, some software is not worth compiling. So there you go. It's a compiler that speeds things up and turns BASIC into machine code to speed things up. And this is a horn of plenty here, a cornucopia. Right, what's we got next month? Not as interesting because I don't have next month's issue. And if I read it, I may just be disappointed to find there's something I would like to read about there. More adverts. The adverts, that's one thing that's great about vintage computer magazines and any magazines is the adverts because things have changed so much. What have we got? Systems simulation, it says here. Forward planning for a business with the help of a TRS-80. Okay. What kind of forward planning are we talking about? Investment planning, it looks like. So this is really serious stuff that to do with business that I'm technically not very interested in, to be honest. I just find it fascinating that there is stuff about this here. So quite a short little program. Hang on. The war game. Okay, so that's different. That's a different one. Okay, that's one, and then there's a war game. So it's a little bit for everyone. So you have a forward planning, investment planning program, and then you have a war game in 410 lines. Doesn't look the most exciting. Message from Air Command Surveillance Center. The object of this game is to attempt to destroy all the enemy aircraft entering your sector. But I'm not sure exactly what it really is doing or what it looks like. It's a bit hard to tell. There's no illustrations there. Again, we have a professional keyboarding case for your Spectrum at a not too bad price of $39.95. Quite a lot of money though in 82. What have we got here? The Amber 2400 matrix printer. So it seems to be they're trying to sort of gear it towards people who want to print out product listings. It's just like a sort of a receipt printer, it looks like. Not a proper one. Enter the Dragon. Yeah, nice title there. Dragon had very nice looking computers, I think. I like the look of them. Atom 4th. So it's a 4th programming language, which you probably haven't heard too much of unless you're really into your vintage things. So of course, in the old days, you didn't just have, you had BASIC. Obviously, everyone knows about BASIC, Pascal, Fortran, 4th, COBOL. I'm sure there are lots of others I can't think of now. Sort of the really old ones. 4th is supposed to be quite good, I think. I do seem to remember that there's sort of a slightly simplified kind of assembly language feel to it. We got another wordplay. Forthright conclusions. Yep. The Office Information Center selling Tandy. So we've got a Tandy TRS-80 there, which is actually quite nice looking, I must say. I especially like the keyboard there. It looks like a really quality keyboard to me. No other micro has this much power and this much size for this much money. So I suppose they're trying to say best value for money. And it looks like a calculator keyboard. It's got one, maybe 2 lines there. Don't let its size fool you. If anything, New Brain is like the TARDIS. British people like referencing Doctor Who, don't they? It may look small on the outside, but inside there is an awful lot going on. It's got the kind of features you'd expect from one of the really big business micros, but at a price of under 200 excluding VAT. It won't give you any sleepless nights. However, let the facts speak for themselves. You get what you don't pay for. That's a good one. I like that line. You get what you don't pay for. New Brain comes with 24K ROM and 32K RAM. Most competitors expect you to make do with 16K RAM. What's more, you can expand all the way up to 2 megabytes. OMG, that is a lot. A figure that wouldn't look out of place on the machine costing 10 times as much, although you probably would have to pay quite a bit for it, though. We've also given you the choice of 256, 320, 512, and 640 by 250 screen resolution, whereas most only offer a maximum of 256 by 192. That is actually quite good. So the screen here, that's not a screen then. Is that a cartridge port? I thought it was a screen there for a moment, but apparently this is the screen right here. It's got the cable there. And that is very good resolutions there. Now, New Brain, I don't know much about New Brain. I don't think they did so well, did they? Because I haven't really heard much about them since. Atom, BBC, yeah. A Sharp review, so again the wordplay a little bit. Is Sharp's new personal computer really a replacement for the K or just an upgrade? Well, yeah, you can find out. And the guy who's written this, quite funny, the guy who's written this review is called Henry Budget. So I suppose he likes a good bargain then, doesn't he? Right. Monitoring the situation, he likes a good wordplay, that's for sure. Soft talking expansion unit we got here in operation. Nice printer. So MZ80A, 2 megahertz clock frequency, 6Ks of ROM, 48Ks of RAM, which is quite good actually. Got basic machine code monitor, keyboard, 25 by 40 character display, so same as the Commodore 64. Low res graphics, 80 by 50. So cassette, 1200 baud, integral unit, pretty good. Yeah, doesn't look too bad, but of course the cost, 549 for just the computer. The printer is 496. A printer was expensive in these days. You would expect to pay the same for a printer as for a microcomputer. Now, what we got here is a Spectrum and what looks like life size. Sinclair ZX Spectrum, 16K or 48K RAM, etc. Full-size moving key keyboard. I suppose that's the best you can say about it, is that the keys actually move. Quite like the nifty little printer. It's quite tiny. It's quite a tiny, cute little thing. It's 4 inches wide. Printer there. Printer paper, pack of 5 rolls, is £12. So this is exactly the same ZX Spectrum advert I think there was in the other magazine before. Right, but I got a T-Bug from BASIC, so gain access to your Tandy's monitor while programming in BASIC. Okay, that sounds useful if you want to use machine code routines in your BASIC programs. What do we got here? Impact Software. WEAR, actually, not where. And from Scotland's capital comes quality software for the Sinclair. So you got some adventure games, it looks like. So you got The Quest, 48K, Orb, 48K, Star Trek, 16K, and Starfighter, 16K. Are these full sound effects? Not amazing games, probably, but micro spares, discs and tapes. Now, this is one thing I'm a bit curious about sometimes. What was actually the price of a disc? Now, this would be packs of 10, I presume. So 5 1/4 inch single side, single density BASF, so quality brand, $17.95 plus VAT. That is quite a bit of money. Double-sided, double density, $25.95 plus VAT. I'm not sure what the VAT was in these days, but it wasn't super high. Maybe it was 12-15%. I'm not sure. Cassette, 65p, and it says here all storage media is top quality, no high street rubbish. Very important to point out in your advert that they're not selling high street rubbish. Yeah. You don't usually see that in adverts these days. No high street rubbish. Books for the Spectrum, yep. Mini calc, so a spreadsheet program in less than 2K. not impossible if you use your basic wisely. So it is possible to create, of course, a spreadsheet program doesn't necessarily have to take up a lot of space. It's the data that will take up a lot of space, though, once you start using it. That looks quite nice, actually. Mini calcs. That's the program of the week or the month, I guess. Program listing here, and that looks terrible to read because of the stretched letters, the sideways stretched letters. Genie dealers, yeah, sharp. Again, sharp looks like they're quite sharp these days. I don't know what happened to sharp. I'll have to look that up after I finish this video just to see exactly what the story was of the sharp computers. Ingenious, Genie 1 and 2 accessories, yeah. That's a nice computer desk there as well, the kind of style you used to have in those days. Buffered programming, how to get your program writing programs. Now that sounds quite useful, isn't it? So why do all the work yourself with programming when you can make a program to program for you? So first you make a small program to program, and then you make the small program a bigger program while you sit back and, I don't know, watch Back to the Future or something. In 1982, that's quite an achievement. But of course, if somebody traveled back in time with a DeLorean to 1982, they could have left you the video, I guess, of Back to the Future. Let's see. Anything IBM can do. Yeah. 16-bit. 16-bit, yeah. 1982, 16-bit was a thing already in 1982. And of course, anything IBM can do, Icarus can do. Better is the implication. They don't even have to say it because that's a good way. You don't have to say probably or anything like that. You just have to use something idiomatic. That's the reference. For those who don't know, anything I can do, anything you can do, I can do better is a reference to Annie Oakley, the musical. Annie, Get Your Gun is the name of the musical, which is based on the true story of Annie Oakley, which is quite a fascinating true story as well, by the way. Look it up. Quite a good musical, I must say. I saw it at the theatre one time back in the 80s as well. A very good story. Right, come and meet Vic. Okay, so here is the Vic, of course, VIC-20. Still, I mean, at this time, the Commodore 64 was just starting out, and so VIC-20 was, at this time, and probably quite a bit after as well, an absolute mega colossal seller for Commodore, so it hadn't stopped yet. Right, so connections, keeping a micro in time with itself, very important if you're doing any kind of programming that needs timing. See, learning to use the PET. So, of course, the PET still around, even though it was technically in many ways, you might say, superseded by the VIC-20 at this point, and of course later by the Commodore 64. It was still around. It was still used in schools, I presume. Now, the new Dragon 32, so well designed, you'll even understand this ad, it says. And I must say, I really like this font. As a designer, yeah, that is beautiful. That is a beautiful, beautiful font, and they used it all the way throughout here as well. Now, the thing about computers at this time, of course, not only did they want to market it to make sure that it was tempting for the whole family. I mean, it was for the kids, it was for the grown-ups, it was for mom, it was for dad. But you also have to make it understandable for everyone as well. The kids, of course, they will be fine and they can get it, but the grown-ups, they need to understand it too. And it's not a given, is it? Because, I mean, today, the generation we have now, the new generation of kids growing up, they are what is known as digital natives, which is to say that they have grown up with their whole lives. They have computers, the internet, smartphones, and social media, which is the current sort of paradigm of computing. And it hasn't really changed much the last 10 years now. It has pretty much been standing still after the evolution of the internet from the early 90s to now. It hasn't really changed much the last 10 years. There's been no major paradigm shifts. Lots of minor ones, but no major ones. And the principles of it are the same. It might be different social media platforms that have come and gone, but the principle of a social media platform remains the same and has been the same for a long time. So yeah, Dragon 32, I really like the design of those and the adverts. What have we got here? Data storage, the final part of our series on efficient storage. I missed all the other parts, which means I don't know how to store things efficiently. There you go. Graphic printer, yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. Another thing, of course, in these days, a printer wasn't necessarily meant for graphics so much, because of the way that type worked. Now, of course, these days you make something on the screen, and what you see is what you get, kind of principle. You create your PDF and you print it, and it looks exactly the same on the printout. But in the early days of word processing and printers, it was quite common for the printer to have inside it its own definitions of font. So it might have a standard font, it might have the sort of extra small, the cursive font, or italics, bold, etc. And all those things would have been programmed into the printer itself, and then in your word processor you had these little codes that you would put in to control which font was being used for that particular text, because on the screen you couldn't see it. It had to, because of the limited resolution, you had to see all the text exactly the same on the screen. What you saw on the screen was not what was going to be printed out. And then many printers didn't even have a graphics mode. They only had text mode, and had these fonts, which I think it's what's known as PostScript fonts. I'm not 100% sure now. So that was quite a common thing. So yeah, good old days, PostScript fonts, and you had what you saw on the screen was not what was printed out. So you had often tried to do sort of trial and error thing as well. Once you knew how it worked, it was fine. And most word processors would come with a sort of a test document that you could print out, and you had examples of all the different fonts and how it worked. So our first printer was like that. I'm not sure if it even printed graphics at all. I think it only printed text. Right, chess, of course, very popular since the early days of computing to play chess. Spectral Invaders, of course, Space Invaders on the Spectrum. The original and the best, it says, although it sounds like it's not the original, because if it had been original, it would have been called Space Invaders. So yeah, it's still a clone. Subscriptions, I think it may be a little bit too late to subscribe now. How much is it now? We got £12.10 for 12 issues, £15.75 overseas, and £35.35 for overseas airmail. So £12.10 for 12 issues, which is more expensive than buying it in a newsstand. So it means it is quite well priced for selling in the newsstand, and you have to pay for postage actually. So it's a convenience, isn't it, I guess. Subroutine library. So here we have basic subroutines. Okay, that's interesting. Looks like there's some different vertical bar of length and convert number to binary, convert 4-digit hex, etc., etc. Yeah. Looks like it's useful, could be useful. Oh, what's this now? The Valley. What are you, barbarian or wizard? Choose your character type carefully. Barbarians recover quickly, but their magic doesn't come easily. A wizard, slow on the draw and slow to mature, but live long enough and grow wise enough, and your lightning bolts are almost unstoppable. The Valley is a real-time game of adventure and survival. You may choose one of 5 character types to be your personal extension of self, to battle and pit your wits against a number of monsters. Find treasure, fight a thunder lizard in the arid deserts of the valley, conquer a kraken in the lakes surrounding the dread temples of Inagioth, or cauterize a wraith in the Black Tower. In fact, live out the fantasies you've only dared dream about, but beware. More die than live to tell the tale. You've read the program. Computing Today, April 82. Now buy the tape. So, yeah. But of course, as lots of adverts in these days, you don't see any pictures of the thing itself. Is it text-based, presumably? Probably. Yeah. Fascinating, though. Fascinating. And that's another thing I'm going to do after having looked through computer magazines, is, of course, sort of trying to, at least when it comes to programs available for the Commodore 64, it's still a bit early days here, of course, is that if there is a program or a game that is mentioned in the magazine that I find fascinating for whatever reason, even if it is because it is a little bit cheesy or just seems a bit silly, I will try to sort of see if I can find it as well. Right. Budget-minded, Sinclair and BBC Micro, both quite reasonable computers, absolutely. High resolution on your pet. And this, kids, this is what high resolution looked like in 1982. I'll just make sure I'm focused on that now. Yes, it is. Actually, I'll just move it up a little bit and do a little focus on that. Look at that. Absolutely super sharp, high resolution graphics. That is, oh yeah. They don't do it like that anymore, do they? No. They don't do it like that anymore. Let's see. The Apple II is limited to 64K RAM, says expert circa 1981. And that is, of course, rubbish. The fact is, my Apple II has 128K, and I run 80K VisiCalc models, PA2MD. And Programmer has 192Ks, and I run 128K basic programs. Yeah, well, if he wants to create a basic program 128K, yes, of course, be my guest. And of course, this guy, the boffin here, has 320K, and I manipulate arrays of up to 250 times 250 elements in RAM for whatever reason. A bit cheesy, this advert, isn't it? Okay, but yeah. Elegant programming. Let's see. It's a bug hunt time. Let's see. Elegance versus efficiency. Here's a good advice for you. Here, really good advice. A good program is well written and well behaved. What else we got? Efficiency is a hardware problem. Programming is about elegance. Yes. Crashing is unnecessary. If a BASIC has an on error statement, then there is no excuse for any interpreter generated error messages. So, because that means you can actually program into the BASIC program how to handle an error so it doesn't crash the program. So yeah, that is a good point, actually. It's a good point. Proton acceleration. Here's another game here. The Tomb of Dracula. 3D horror adventure game. 3D. Occupying over 13.5K of memory, a superb 3D graphics adventure game for the ZX81 with 16K RAM for only £3.95. Enter Dracula's tomb with 30 minutes to sunset. To sunset? Yes, it says sunset, but sunset? Yes. In search of the fabled vampire's treasure. Pick up valuable silver stakes and use them to defend yourself against the lurking horrors. Ghouls, zombies, pits of primeval slime. See them all on the ZX81's plan of the tomb when it will let you. Take a chance on a mystery vault if you dare, and all the time the minutes are ticking by to sunset. When Dracula rises from his coffin and comes after you. Each of the infinite levels of the tomb has its own 300 volts. Go as deep as you like. The Prince of Darnkes, another typo, The Prince of Darnkes will seek you out in his bloodlust. Warning, people of an exceptionally nervous disposition should play this game only during the hours of daylight. Special facility enables the game in progress to be saved on tape so you can continue it whenever you choose. That is brilliant, isn't it? And in 3D as well. Ooh. Very exciting, actually. I'm a bit curious now. I wonder if anyone's actually ever played this game. Has anyone played this game? Yeah. Attention, all BBC and Atom owners. Let's see, adventure, blah, blah, blah. Okay, this is really small type. You don't get small type like this in magazines these days. I can still read it though because my eyesight is perfect. High quality chess game with castling, en passant, play, black or white, reduction of illegal moves, and 6 levels of play. Setup, problem games. Yeah, lots of chess. World Geography, Eldorado Gold, Time, Trek, as a Star Trek game, of course. Alien Destroyers, I presume that's Space Invaders again. A lot of Space Invaders games. Space Invaders clones everywhere, of course, in the early days of computing. Luckily, we moved on from there, didn't we? And we invented other game concepts that actually were nicer, let's be honest. Printout, that is the letters section. And this is actually a letter from Clive Sinclair himself. That's pretty cool, isn't it? The Clive Sinclair wrote a letter to this magazine, to Computing Today. And it says here, Dear Sir, in response to the many queries which I understand your magazine has received, I would like to personally explain the current delivery situation for our new ZX Spectrum personal computer. The general public's response to our new computer has far exceeded our expectations, and we have been swamped with orders. This and some small initial production delays have led in turn to considerable delays in delivery. Regrettably, many of our customers may have to wait up to 12 weeks from our receipt of their order for delivery of their Spectrum, and we are writing to them all to apologize for the inconvenience and to offer them the chance of an immediate refund. For those customers who continue to wait, we shall be sending out with each Spectrum, in compensation for the delay, a £10 voucher which can be used in part payment for a ZX printer or to buy a complete pack of 5 rolls of printer paper. We are also providing customers with a new demonstration tape containing 1. A complete keyboard trainer to introduce the Spectrum, 2. 3 major programs, an exciting game, Through the Wall, a drafting program, Draw, and character generator, which demonstrates user-defined graphics. 3. A series of illustrative sounds not nice, doesn't it? A series of illustrative programs, Bubble Sort, Evolution, Life, Monte Carlo, and Waves. Finally, I would like to assure you and all our customers that the initial problems with the Spectrum have now been completely overcome. Production is running smoothly at 5,000 units per week and will rise sharply over the coming months. We are confident that our present backlog will be cleared by the end of September and hope that you will see current delays in the context of our successful delivery of more than 500,000 computers in the last 2 years. Yours faithfully, Clive Sinclair, Sinclair Research Limited, London, SW1X 8LB. That's quite nice, isn't it? A letter from Sir Sinclair himself. I'm only going to read out that one, I think. So, now, one thing that is interesting with the letters, of course, once you start getting into old vintage computer magazines, is that there might be to be continueds or referencing of earlier letters. So it's nice when you have several magazines in a row, or hopefully even a complete vintage of them, a complete year, and you can sort of see what's happening, what conversations are happening in the letter sections. But of course, as I've noticed once you get to the more game geared computer magazines like Commodore User and computer and video games, there's a lot more bickering going on in the letter section because somebody says, oh, your review was worse than the review in Zap 64. You guys suck. Zap 64 is great. I'll never buy your magazine again. That sort of nonsense thing. And that is so childish and so annoying. I think I'm quite sure that at this point, it's not as bad as that. I think it's more civil, I think, and more intellectual, indeed, on average. And of course, this magazine isn't just for the plebs, though. This is not your Daily Mail and the Sun readers. This is also for the people who read the New York Times and the that sort of thing. So, and the Wall Street Journal. Right. Let's see. The editor takes time off this month, not to skip writing his column, but to see a new movie. Okay. Is this Tron or something? I don't know. I don't know Tron. I don't know the first Tron film. Yes. It is indeed the original Tron film. No, I never watched Tron. I've seen the remake, and I'm not sure what to make of it. I think maybe, I don't know. It sort of feels like it makes more sense if you've seen the original film because I think it's referencing the original, isn't it? One thing I do know about Tron is that the music, I believe, the soundtrack was created by Wendy Carlos of Switched on Bach fame, who is possibly one of the most instrumental people in making synthesizers be taken seriously by the classical and the popular music community, and the world at large, because until then, I think a lot of people had the impression that with a synthesizer, you didn't need to be a musician anymore. You didn't need virtuosity. You didn't need skill to create the sounds of traditional instruments. But the thing is that being able to create a symphonic expression of music, like in Switched on Bach, it takes the same or even more amount of skill in many ways than playing traditional instruments. It's just a different set of skills. And there's nothing less virtuosic about it. So it's quite an achievement as an album, as a production, as a concept, and also it is so important in how synthesizers were perceived before and after the change there. Very important. So, yeah, Wendy Carlos or Walter Carlos. I'm not sure exactly when he had his sort of gender correction done, but he was she. I should call him she really. But of course, she wrote the soundtrack to Tron, which I haven't actually heard, but I probably should because it's supposed to be good. Right, computer art. This font very sort of common to use in sort of a futuristic things back in these days. You see lots of these. If you look at these different shops here, this one uses it. That one uses the same one. This one, this one, this one. This one here, this one here. So yeah, almost a third of them uses that sort of computer font. Graphics at twice the speed of tan. The Tug Intelligent Video Board. Adventure, so Colossal Adventure. That's an absolute classic, I hear. I haven't played it, but it's supposed to be one of the really big, the classic mainframe game Adventure. This one, I think isn't that possible? I think that might actually be the first. Am I right in thinking that is the first computer adventure game, Colossal Adventure? CT standards, yeah. And I'm just gonna, it's a little bit sort of businessy, so not that exciting, I think. Oh, that's an interesting one. Okay. Dianetics. Hardware, the human mind. Software, correctly and incorrectly graded experiences, plus unevaluated data. Follow this spectacular journey into the depths and capabilities of the world's most sophisticated computer, the human mind. Manual written by one of the first nuclear physicists, only £4. Dianetics, never heard of. I'll have to look up that. That sounds very interesting. Do you know anything about Dianetics? Leave a comment below. You can't get a home computer from Texas Instruments under 16K RAM. That is good. These ones, quite good computers actually. A friend of mine had one of these, a TI-99 4A. I think that's exactly the one he had. It was really plentiful. Yeah, solid, nice keyboard. More memory for your micros. There we are. So that is Computing Today, October 1982. It might not be the most exciting computer magazine. I thought it had some interesting bits in it, and it's always nice having a little sort of stroll down memory lane and being reminded of some of these things, and also learning new things about what happened in the early history of microcomputers from the 80s. So yeah. Right, so there we are. Computing Today, October 1982. Did you find that interesting? I hope you did. I don't think it's the most exciting computer magazine, but I find all these computer magazines interesting for some reason or other. There's always something about them that is a conversation starter, something to talk about, something to muse a little bit about. I find them fascinating. The history, of course, the level of technology, the prices, the adverts. Not the most exciting magazine this, I would say, in my collection, but I am doing them in chronological order, I think. So it will get more exciting because the way that, both because I'm going to get more into the more game geared magazines, which of course is more exciting to me as a nostalgic thing as well, because I was into certainly on the Commodore 64, games was my main thing. So yeah, it's going to be quite exciting, I think, to see what that will bring. I'm not sure what the next magazine will be, but I will make another episode like this, I think, at some point. I hope you enjoyed this, and thank you very much for watching. And yeah, goodbye for now, I suppose. I'll just say goodbye for now. It's been a long enough video already. Bye bye. Bye bye. Yeah.